so who here has heard of post-traumatic stress disorder? Raise your hand. Okay. Give me some words that you think of when you hear post-traumatic stress disorder. Yep.
War.
Yep. Birth. Okay.
It's too obvious to say traumatized.
Yeah. Yes. Anyone else? Yep.
An accident.
Yep.
Anxiety. Soldiers.
Okay, it's got pretty clogged now, so. Oh, okay. Yep.
Back in the day, it used to be called shell shock.
Yep. Okay, so post-traumatic stress disorder, or shell shock, is a type of anxiety disorder. It can occur after you've seen or experienced a traumatic event, resulting in threat of injury or death. Therefore, many soldiers who have fought in wars have been affected with PTSD. In Shakespeare's play Othello, I believe this included his two main characters, Iago and Othello. Many people wonder how the play could have come to such a tragic end, with Othello falsely accusing Desdemona of infidelity, killing her and eventually killing himself, which is all in all a pretty grim story. But what many don't know is that there was more to the story than meets the eye. Yes, there was jealousy, yes, there was deception, betrayal, love, and war. The list goes on. But all these things are basic ingredients to a good piece of Shakespeare. What makes Othello different is the fact that Shakespeare also included a very modern underlying storyline that most of us have overlooked. What was it that made Iago believe Iago want to ruin Othello's life, having been so close to him? What was it that made Othello believe Iago's blatant lies? The hard life of a soldier who had witnessed his worst nightmares on the battlefield. Post-traumatic stress disorder. Yep, it was there even in Shakespearean times. Was it recognised by the public? Maybe not, but it still existed, ravaging the lives of so many soldiers who had returned from war. When affected with PTSD, men returned as ticking time bombs. Some left the war as heroes and came back as weapons. Everything they'd known as home or love was now twisted and coloured by what they'd experienced in the war zone, and they couldn't come home. This was much the case for both Othello and Iago. There were quite a few factors that would prove to be, in the modern world, symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. So, we'll begin with Iago. Shakespeare critics have argued for years over Iago's true motivation to explain his actions. Some say it was because he was racist. Some say he was an evil incarnate. Poet Samuel Taylor Coleridge calls Iago a being next to the devil, only not quite the devil, and goes on to call Iago's behaviour motiveless malignity. But I believe Coleridge has overlooked a vital part of what really caused Iago to lash out, and in my opinion, his malignity was not motiveless. Iago was filled with intense feelings of mistrust and betrayal, in part due to his PTSD. So, despite what some say, I believe Iago loved Othello like a brother, and after all they'd been through in the battlefield and all they'd witnessed together, it was impossible for them to not form a connection. Therefore, when Iago found out that Othello chose Cassio for lieutenant over him, he felt betrayed and immediately lost all trust in Othello. In Iago's case, this changed him and made him more paranoid and jealous. Instead of just being upset that Othello chose Cassio over him, he became rational, falling into a full-fledged rage against Othello, taking revenge on him and causing his life to be filled with misery. It is this intense jealousy that arises from Iago's post-traumatic stress disorder. Now, Ewan McGregor is going to help me explain this a little.
Talks about the fact that he's fought with Othello at Rhodes, at Cyprus, and on other grounds, Christian and heathen. So he's fought with Othello in different places in the world, and I think Iago feels very strongly that he is the natural right-hand man to Othello. However, when the position becomes free, we don't know why it becomes free, he's overlooked, and Othello gives the position of lieutenant to Cassio, to Michael Cassio, much to the disappointment and fury of Iago. And I think there's the racism in him as well. I mean, it's quite tricky because I really do believe it comes from a place of love, that Iago has loved Othello.
Right. So many of you, honestly, if you were put in that position, would you feel a little betrayed? Raise your hands. Yeah, that's most of you. So I know I would, because it would be basic human nature. Now, imagine that feeling, but 100 times stronger. You see, that's what PTSD does. It amplifies feelings such as mistrust and betrayal and jealousy until they eventually consume you. Shakespeare helps us to furthermore understand this through this quote from Iago.
One Michael Cassio of Florentine, Othello almost damned in fair wife, that never sent a squadron in the field, nor the division of battle notes. More than a spinster loosed the bookish Theric, wherein the 12 consuls can compose, as masterly as he, mere prattle without practice, is all his soldiership.
Right, so here, Iago is claiming that Othello passed him over for a promotion, giving one Michael Cassio the job of lieutenant instead, despite never sending a squadron in the field. Iago even proves to us the background he and Othello shared, as he says,
And I, of whom his eyes can see the proof at Rhodes, at Cyprus, and on other grounds, Christian and heathen, must be lead and calmed by debtor and creditor, this countercaster, he in good time must his duty repeat.
So Iago claims that he's far more qualified than Cassio, who lacks Iago's experience, and he also describes to us the history that he and Othello have shared. Othello's own eyes had seen the proof of this, and yet Iago was still overlooked. In an interview with Philip Seymour Hoffman, who recently played Iago in a modern dress version of the play, he says, "I wanted to examine and live in the positive dimension between the two guys, the best friend scenario between the two guys. That line, 'I am bound to thee forever,' is sincere. Othello has is sincere. It really is a lifelong bond." He goes on to say, "It's clear that they have fought wars right next to each other. You get this feeling that they were in the First Gulf War, the Second, and Afghanistan. They probably killed and did awful things together. I think they have an intimacy that's profound." Now, Iago's feelings of paranoia come clear when he is suspicious that Othello is sleeping with his wife Amelia. And that's Olivia's quote.
I hate the war, and it is thought abroad that twixt my sheets he is down my office. I know not if it be true, but I, for mere suspicion in that kind, will do as if with surety.
Okay, so right, here Iago says that he hates Othello because he's heard a rumour that Othello is sleeping with Amelia as he is twixt Iago's sheets. This paranoia is part of the beginning of Iago's irrational rage against Othello. Because of Iago's post-traumatic stress disorder, he was, as a result, wrecked with feelings of jealousy, betrayal, paranoia, mistrust. He gave in to his antagonistic thoughts towards Othello and decided to act upon them, ultimately taking revenge on Othello and ruining his life. And now we'll move on to Othello himself. Right, so according to psychologist Shauna Springer of the Clinical Psychology Associates of Florida, in extreme cases of PTSD, the anxiety, upset, and insecurity commonly felt in sufferers can be magnified into chronic forms of jealousy. Sleeplessness, hypervigilance, irritability, and obsessive thoughts can develop. Some individuals may become suicidal, and sadly, jealousy is often a factor underlying homicides of women by their spouses or partners. Cultural factors add to the emotional mix of jealousy, as individuals may fear shame or humiliation caused by real or perceived infidelity of a spouse. Now, if that doesn't basically sum up Othello's character in a nutshell, I'm not sure what does. Othello's post-traumatic stress disorder affects him in quite the same way as Iago. He develops extreme paranoia and jealousy, which Iago manipulates to his own jealous advantages. Othello, like Iago, distrusts his own wife Desdemona, and as a result, when Iago insinuates that she is having an affair with Cassio, Othello believes him. His newly developed jealousy also adds to the situation, as because he is so jealous, Othello acts upon this and ends up murdering Desdemona. The cause of Othello's jealousy is slightly ironic in a way. He suspects Desdemona is sleeping with Lieutenant Cassio, as Iago, because of his own jealousy and paranoia, has planted these false ideas in his head. Shakespeare therefore allows us to see the never-ending cycle that Othello and Iago are trapped in, as each one's symptoms feed off the others. We are able to see the true extent of Othello's jealousy at the end of the play, where in some of his final lines he states, that's Christian's,
Speak of me as I am, nothing extenuate, nor set down aught in malice. And must you speak of one that loves not wisely but too well, of one not easily jealous, but being bored, perplexed in the extreme.
So, Shakespeare critic E.C. Bradley responded to this quote by describing how Othello's tragedy lies in the fact that his whole nature was indisposed to jealousy, and yet was such that he was unusually open to deception, and if once wrought to passion, likely to act with little reflection and with no delay, and in the most decisive manner conceivable. Therefore, we can see how Othello naturally wasn't a jealous man, but somehow became one with little influence. Because of his PTSD, it was very easy for Othello to become wrought with obsessive jealousy, as it was one of the most common symptoms of the disorder. Now, I'm going to tell you a couple of true stories. On September the 2nd, 2008, war veteran John Needham was questioned about the death of his girlfriend Jacqueline. John was diagnosed with PTSD. I was trained to kill. I come home. I can't adjust to regular civilian lifestyle, says Needham. I spun out of control and I needed help. John Needham faced trial for murdering the woman he loved. You know she was absolutely precious to me, and she still is, he said. On the 5th of February this year, an Iraq war veteran, Jason Pemberton, shot and killed his wife before fatally shooting himself soon after. Jason Pemberton had won 3 Purple Hearts and a Bronze Star for his work in the army, and was suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. Following his service in the Middle East, he was described as a hero by many, and his wife Tiffany was deemed a casualty of war. Does that sound familiar at all? In both these cases, post-traumatic stress disorder was blamed for each man's actions. So therefore, shouldn't we rightfully say that this could be the same case for Othello, and indeed Iago? I feel certain that this interpretation of the play helps to illuminate the motives behind Othello and Iago's actions, which in turn drive Shakespeare's tragedy. I'll leave you with a quote from a war veteran. It's a struggle of mind and body, with thoughts betraying every second. A friend shatters in front of you, a soldier no longer able to care for himself. He devotes himself to chasing shadows, certain that monsters lurk inside.